See right there. Let's make sure I got you in there. Yes, if it looks like we're inexperienced at going live, we are inexperienced at going live.
Just a little.
Just a little. So, and all this stuff's changed since I did live videos before. But I think, see the whole table there? Eventually, maybe we'll get more technical on how we do this, but I think I can see both of us here, which is good. I'm gonna do one other thing. And there. All right. I'm only going to give your first name.
That works.
How's that? Is that okay?
Perfect.
This is Phil. Felipe. You know, I do know this. I have to find some cool way to, like, there's all these guys that have these podcasts that do cool introductions.
Yeah, you're going to need a really.
I'm going to need something cool. Welcome to the Truth Keepers of the Freedom of the Free Nation of the United States. I can't do that. It's just not me. But we do have a cool topic today, which is a good thing. You will always get from me a biblical perspective, like you may hear me occasionally say something I shouldn't and then give you a scripture at the same time. So just, you know, I'm a normal human being. If I say something stupid, just say, hey, that was stupid. If he says something stupid, write us a letter. I want to get it. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I don't want a letter. Don't send it to me. Send it to this guy.
How long have we known each other? A while.
Oh, it's been several years.
Yeah. We do go to church together. There are some rules with this video. Like, I cannot share and would not want to share where you work,
correct,
where you are, from. It would jeopardize his position, potentially the place he works. But you are not only a friend, you are in a position to be able to get information that the average everyday person can't get. Now, the average everyday person should be getting this, though, right?
They should be hearing more about what's going on. Unfortunately, it's being kept from.
Yes, and it's being kept from them intentionally. Because there are lawsuits filed, the letters went out all over the U.S. You've seen the letter, and it is directly related to gun confiscation. So I'm never going to put something on here that we can't validate back up, or at least have a source that we know is a true source. But before we get into actually the gun confiscation, I think we need to lay some groundwork.
Yes.
So I've been in the security business almost 20 years. I hold 4 licenses now. I just let one go. I did have a private protective service license. We let that go just because I can't keep up with everything. And really, I was doing it to keep up with the laws. Like, I wanted the laws and regulations, and have no interest really in working as in that field of security anymore, for some obvious reasons. But we are required as an FFL holder and a Type 7 FFL holder to keep up with laws and regulations and things that are going on in this country that not only affect you and me, but that affect all of you. And so the gun confiscation issue, although we're going to get there in a minute, there's some groundwork that if you're not aware, you're probably living under a rock on HR 1808, but probably not on the second piece of this. So if you don't know HR 1808, it's gotten pulled briefly, was passed by the House. I do not think we had enough votes to pass it through the Senate, but you don't know this because we have all these people coming every day. They're asking about it. You're welcome to chime in. But HR 1808 was going to limit over 450 types of guns. Everybody coming in here was under the delusion that it was only going to affect AR-15s. Not the case at all. In fact, if I had one, I would show it to you. The little Plinkster, the little 22 semi-automatic Plinkster that if your kids shoot squirrels with, if you live in a city, you don't shoot squirrels. But those of us that live in the country, you and I both live in the country now, that would become illegal because it would have a removable magazine that holds more than 10 rounds. That is probably one of the most, innocuous type guns in the world. Like, it's a 22 rifle that your kids can use to shoot squirrels with.
It's a starter gun.
It's a starter gun. Yeah. But because it has multiple capacities above 10 and because it is semi-automatic, they were seeking to eliminate that as well. And you just need to know that that is not, no one has ever used a gun like that I know of.
I have never heard in all my time in my career of someone using any weapon of that sort in a mass shooting or to inflict any harm on anybody, period.
No. The only one that I know was a 22. It wasn't a 22 rifle. Reagan got shot with a 22.
Okay.
And lived. He
lived.
lived. And who was his bodyguard at the time? Secret Service. Yeah, I'll think of it later. Yeah, I can't remember. So I'm a little older than you too, though. So
Just
I remember that happening.
Just a little.
I remember that. But those types of guns would be on the list. And it was not an attempt, and it's not an attempt to circumvent our regular rights on Second Amendment. Like, it went way beyond where it should go. Now it's apparently temporarily pulled.
My understanding is it's been temporarily pulled, but they're supposed to bring it back up in the very, very near future.
Yes, that's the plans. Here's the other thing that this has happened, and a lot of people don't know about it. There's actually 2 rules going into effect. Now, I cannot call some of this a law, because the ATF's job is not to make laws. They do interpretations of laws and call them rulings, which I have to be careful how frustrated I get over this because I am an FFL holder. But a lot of the ATF guys, especially here in Tennessee, they're great people. I don't know anybody outside of Tennessee, but truth of the matter is they try to interpret things by our Constitution. One of the ATF guys here is a good friend of ours. I think he's like maybe a senior intel officer or something like that. And he said, hey, the ATF's never, ever, picked up anybody for or gone and sought out anyone for a brace on their gun, or for the bump stocks, or for SBRs, or those types of things. It's really not what they care about. What they care about are the groups that are connected to human trafficking, drugs, other crimes, because a lot of times those things will open doors so they can go after these folks. However, this has recently changed. We've seen a couple of cases now that are going to court where people have been arrested for SBRs, that is a short barrel rifle, or they have been arrested now for the blades, the type things that we see on a lot of these pistols that have been legal forever. They don't affect anything with the firing of the gun at all. In fact, if you are handicapped and you have CP or Parkinson's or something like that, like, it helps you stabilize a gun, helps you be more. Actually, it helps you be safer with the gun.
It does.
And then on the tail of that, I think you've seen the videos too. There are a number of ATF agents going and knocking on doors with local law enforcement saying, hey, we have this multi-gun form. We have on record that you bought these guns. We'd like to see them. That's what's happening, right?
Correct.
Did the agent that came to visit you all, did he share any or shed any light on that? Have any discussion about it?
No, most of the ATF agents that I've spoken to, they're just as confused on what to do currently as we are. The rules and the checklists that they have set out for ATF to abide by, and the guidelines that they want them to enforce, it's so murky.
Yeah.
You can find the checklist for the ATF on what is considered a brace versus butt stock on a firearm, right? You can find that online. It's not hard to find it. It's really.
In fact, I'll post it. I'll post a link below after this video.
If anyone has a brace on their weapon, I implore them to go and look at that checklist and honestly read it and assess your own brace. And you let yourself know, if not someone else, where do you fall in that category?
Yeah.
Because I've had to do the same thing, and I'm reading this going, everything I have falls under butt stock if that's how they want to interpret it.
Yeah.
But there again, I spoke to an ATF agent who says, don't worry about it, you're good.
as long as maybe he's in that position.
Right.
Let me show you something. I'll grab it off here. So this is considered a blade. This is not the SBA 3, which is the most popular brace, but this is a blade. It's really not used as a buttstock. I have a friend who has one arm. He lost it in the military. And he likes the SBA 3 brace and these because he can literally put Velcro through here. And with the single arm he has, he is able to brace his gun and hold it. Like it goes on here, it holds a brace, and then you're able to use your AR pistol like a pistol. That's what they're used for.
That's exactly what it's used for.
Yeah. You did serve military.
I did.
We both had some injured friends.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, one of our other buddies got shot right through there.
Sure did.
Yeah. So that's what he's referring to is these type of braces.
Right. And the major issue with the checklist that they give these guys is one of the main categories that counts for more points than anywhere else on the checklist is, does this brace resemble any buttstock that is on the market currently? If it does, guess what?
Boy, how broad is that?
Very broad.
When did they come in and talk with you all?
This a couple weeks ago.
So it's been pretty recent.
Yeah, it's very recent.
And there have been a number of new rules handed out. Again, like I've read through one of them. I didn't understand all of it. I am an FFL dealer. There's a new one that came out. Today's Monday. It was last Wednesday or Thursday morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. An email came out. I've asked for some clarifications on some things, but the multi-gun form I referenced a minute ago, like that multi-gun form, are you under any constitutional obligation to open up your door to police who show up and say, hey, we just want to make sure you have these guns? Now, you go, well, I don't have anything to hide. Sure, I will do that. I'm going to give you another thought process behind it. You got an ATF car and you got a police car that's going to show up at your house. They don't ride together. They take separate cars based on videos I've seen. You have your neighbors going, oh, crap. What happened next door? Did they finally kill each other? What happened? I mean, literally. So you have police and ATF showing up. Your neighbors, I even have neighbors that live out in the country. You have neighbors.
I have some too.
That's an invasion of privacy. That's actually bringing scrutiny on you that you don't need. Okay, that's just one thing. Two is there's absolutely nothing in the world illegal about buying 10 guns. If you want to buy, I had a guy come in here this week. He's just started buying guns because he's concerned about what's going on in the world today. And I'm going to touch the screen. I don't want this going to sleep. He's concerned about what's going on in the world today. And to be quite honest with you, he's bought a few guns in the last couple of weeks. He's never been a gun owner previous to this. So nothing illegal. No reason to show up. I'm going to put a link to an attorney friend of mine down below. I think maybe the best thing to do is y'all all put him on retainer or just send him to your legal defense insurance if you have some and say, hey, I understand you're here, but you're causing a scene and I don't really know why you're here. Why don't you just go talk with John Harris? I'll give you a shout out. John Harris, best gun attorney in the U.S. in my opinion. Founder of the TFA, Tennessee Farm Association, but just a great guy. So there's a lot of reasons why it's not okay we're just checking things out.
Right. What everyone needs to understand is that law enforcement has to have a legal reason to be on your property, period. If you don't have a fence up or signs that say no trespassing, or, you could even put a sign up that says law enforcement stay off of my property. And unless they have a legal reason to be there, they can't step on it, right? So first off, they need to have a legal reason to be there. And I'm not an attorney, so don't quote me as the gospel truth on everything.
You're not an attorney, right, but he has a lot of insight here. I'll just promise.
I have a lot of insight into this. Law enforcement needs to have they have to have a legal reason to be on your property. If they don't present you with a search warrant for your house when they come to your door, my opinion only, and what I have told my wife, my children, and the rest of my family, and what I personally would do if they came to my door, the very first thing is I would ask to see the warrant. If they said they didn't have one, I would say this is no disrespect towards you, but I do have a constitutional right to say get off of my property.
Yes.
I don't have to let anyone in.
And you don't have to be ugly about it. You
No,
can
you
just
don't.
simply say, "Hey, this is not proper protocol."
Right. We have rules and laws in this country for a reason. When our Constitution was set up, it was set up to protect the people.
Yes.
It wasn't set up so that the government can continue to do what they did in England, right? So as a citizen of the United States, the free country in the free world, right?
Yeah.
We need to understand our laws and our Constitution as best as we can. And I personally think the biggest thing is Fourth Amendment. It's
Yeah.
your rights to be free
Yeah.
and everything, period.
So perfect segue into the actual topic here today, which is the gun confiscation that has already started. And it started in a very methodical way in place. And I doubt 1 in 100 people even know that this is going on.
Right.
The reason it's not going on is they have gotten very effective at media blackouts on things that they don't want you and I to hear, discuss, deliberate, talk about, present, right to our congressman, right to our senator, local house, any of those things. Like they want us, they've gotten smarter actually. Used to, they get everybody in a frenzy, right? Oh, this is news media worthy. Like, well, if we put this story out there, people are going to go ape nuts and we'll get more ratings. They don't care about ratings anymore. They care about the government money that they're getting. If you don't know how the media is funded, just go look it up. So the media is doing a very effective blackout job on this particular topic with gun confiscation. And you and I discussed this a little bit yesterday. There is a model already for what we've seen happening.
Right.
And again, you tell as much as you want to tell about how you know and the letters you've seen and the things you all discussed internally. But and by no means, like blow your cover, right? So to speak. But there is already a boilerplate for how this is happening. It's been done before. It's been done in other countries. And I will let you, the expert on this, in a letter, just ask me what you're going to ask me or I'll shut up. But this is really the reason we did this video today.
Right. It all starts with politics, right? This isn't just a, hey, I don't like what you're doing kind of thing, so I'm going to ask you to give me your weapons. We have to back up a couple years and see, in all reality, this started back in the 70s, maybe even 60s.
Here in the U.S.
In the United States, with the indoctrination of the Marxist mindset into our school systems.
Yes.
But if we fast forward and we come to just a couple of years ago, we heard this whole defund the police thing come out, right?
Polarizing, the attempt at polarizing people. Again.
Right. And there were a lot of people in our country that agreed with it. They were like, oh, the cops are bad. They're evil. They're against everybody.
It's been funny watching how the mayor of Seattle is like, or Portland. Oh, we need more police officers.
We need
Sorry.
more cops.
If you don't know what that story is, then that's okay. No big deal.
So you hear this whole defund the police thing, and we had a lot of people in our country who were definitely for it.
Yeah.
And by no means am I saying that every cop in the world is a good cop.
Cops are people.
Cops are human beings just like everybody else.
Most of them are great guys.
Exactly.
There's like one in every crowd, though.
Right.
There is.
You think about what police officers do. I mean, there's some that actually go undercover and they infiltrate gangs.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're the good guy in a bad gang. Does that mean that the whole gang is bad? I mean, I know that's a weird way of looking at it.
Yeah.
But you have to stop and think. There's bad people who infiltrate law enforcement, and that runs from state and local departments all the way up to the federal level.
Yeah.
If you think that other countries aren't sending spies over here, then you're crazy. I mean,
There's a story.
out
Somebody
there.
got busted this week out in Hawaii. A husband and wife that had been doing it since the 1970s.
So we talk about defund the police, like we have politicians out there who are yelling defund the police, right? Some of them got on board with it for a little while. There were some local jurisdictions who lost a lot of funding because their politicians thought it was a great idea. I even believe was in Minneapolis or somewhere up in Minnesota.
They cut the money to try to put it into some private.
Tried to put in some private funding and a private police force, and that didn't work out too well for them. So that's pretty much where this portion of the gun confiscation stuff has started with the defund the police.
But now there is a boilerplate for this. This has been done before.
Yes, very much so.
It was done in Nazi Germany. So it's not like there's not a playbook that I believe politicians have to follow. So getting into the, I'll shut up, but this is like, it's been done before and effectively before.
100% has been done before, and it caused like the world's worst mass genocide ever, right?
Yeah.
And if we're not careful, we could possibly end up in that situation again, unfortunately.
Yes.
But the politicians started screaming, defund the police. Some of them jump on board with it. And now all of a sudden we're hearing from the liberal side of the table, hey, we're not for defunding the police anymore. I've heard Biden say it God knows how many times at this point that he does not support defunding the police. Now we're on the whole, let's confiscate guns, let's reduce the amount of guns and the type of guns that our citizens can have, because only a shotgun is what people should.
Oh, and you can just go out on the deck in your neighborhood if you're scared and fire it up in the air twice.
That's right.
Yeah.
Or if,
no problems with that.
If your kids are sleeping in the other room and you got double out buck loaded up,
yeah,
and an intruder comes in, just fire at him. Hopefully they won't get hit. Because we all know that double out buck won't go through a drywall.
Oh yeah.
So we're hearing now that the politicians are yelling, no, we're not going to defund the police.
We're just going to make them impotent.
We're going to make them impotent. So
this is a story that right here where we get like
this.
They are going to make the police impotent.
They definitely are. When it comes to politics, it is all about the money, right? I know that's a shock to a lot of people. But politics are all about the money. Crazy, right? So when we get into local and state law enforcement or local and state jurisdictions, they are funded by politicians. If the politicians are not on their side, sometimes they don't get as much money. Sometimes they do, just because it's the status quo, right? But when you get into local jurisdictions, local governments, a lot of your smaller places, they just do not have a ton of money.
Yeah.
So they have to allocate that money in the best ways they can.
And listen, fortunately for years and years and years, like the world was kind of like Mayberry and Andy Griffith. Like small towns had small town problems. You had your local drunk and that was it. Now
it's bleeding out everywhere.
It is bleeding out. I mean, there's some of these local small towns around here have got nicknames like Methmoreland instead of another name. That's like it's a normal name. So we have bigger problems now in smaller towns that need to be dealt with, and we're going to make the law enforcement who has to show up and deal with it completely ill-equipped and inequipped to deal with it.
Right. So these governments, they may not have a ton of money, or they may have a ton of money. They just decide that they're going to put it somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
Instead of in public safety, which technically should probably be their number one concern. I would think.
You'd think.
But that we're looking at that aspect. We're looking at this whole, we're not saying defund the police aspect, right?
Right.
So now the federal government, whenever they have a lot of extra equipment left over that they've bought, because we know there's not any waste in the federal government, they wouldn't have anything left over. They use everything, right?
What's the name of the program, by the way?
They have a program that is called the DRMO program, and I cannot remember what the acronym stands for off the top of my head.
Can you Google DRMO for us?
Yeah, that would be good.
That'd be helpful.
Very helpful. So the DRMO program, the way that it's set up is anything old that still functions, anything new that they have no use for. is put up for basically loan to other
Thank you.
other areas of government, right?
Defense Reutilization Marketing Office.
Right.
Defense Reutilization Marketing Office. Thank you very, very much.
So that the federal government will take all of this extra equipment or leftover equipment that they have. Say they buy brand new ARs for the military, and they have leftover ones that are old. Well, they don't want to just destroy those, and they just don't want to hand those out to the local citizen because ARs are bad. They kill people, apparently. They take those and they house them in a warehouse somewhere until someone applies through the DRMO program for those weapons, for those MRAPs that you see on the road, the Humvees. They even give out clothing and food. That's part of the program. You can look it up. Google DRMO, go to the website and look up what all that they
Defense
offer.
Reutilization Marketing Office.
Correct.
Got it. Ugh.
So you pretty much have to be some big organization with a tie to the government, or you have to be state or local government in order to be part of this program.
And here's where the confiscation has begun.
This
And
is where it begins.
before you tell us about the letter, I'm going to tell you why I think this is happening. And the reason I think this is happening is because local law enforcement, they're our family. They're our friends. They're your buddy's buddy. You play maybe high school football or baseball, or you go to the same civic organization or same church. Truthfully, like especially small towns like Mayberry, you know who the town drunk is. Generally, people know in small towns who the town problems are. That's what it is with local law enforcement. We know each other, like we're friends.
Everybody knows everybody, especially when you get into small towns. I grew up in a really small town. I knew every cop from the time I was 12 years old until now.
Really?
Yeah. I mean,
Is there a reason for that? I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I wasn't always a church going guy.
Okay. All right.
We'll leave it
As
at
long
that.
as you weren't in trouble with it.
So a lot of your smaller jurisdictions, their law enforcement agencies rely on that DMRO program to get equipment that they need because they're not getting the funding that they need in order to buy the equipment, right? So whenever you see, typically whenever you see a Humvee or a big MRAP out on the road that says police on the side of it, like unless it's a major city, I would say something like Houston, Dallas,
They have their own.
they could probably afford to buy their own. Smaller jurisdictions cannot afford to buy their own MRAP. That came from the government.
And,
right?
if you think he's, blowing that out of proportion at all, this past year, I almost said it. Sorry. Got a bit. It almost came out of my mouth. Some of the local law enforcement departments, because ammo went to $1.25 a round on 9mm or more, they did not have the funds to even buy the ammo for the annual qualification for a police department. So if you think, used Hummer, it's only $12,000, $15,000. Well, they weren't buying ammo.
We couldn't even buy ammo, and it's not just one around where we're at. There are multiple jurisdictions that fall into that.
Absolutely. That is absolutely the truth.
So one of the big things that law enforcement relies on and has relied on through the DRMO program for probably about the last 10, 15 years has been the supply of AR-15s to their officers. We have seen a massive uptick in active shooter scenarios. We've seen a massive uptick in school shootings.
Yeah.
Look at Uvalde, Texas.
Or just threats. Threats are off the chart.
Threats are crazy off the chart.
Yeah.
I mean, it is unbelievable. The statistics are out there. You can look it up on public sources. But these jurisdictions, they rely on the supply of those firearms to them so that their officers are equipped enough to be able to engage with an active shooter if it were to occur.
Yeah.
There was an incident many, many years ago with the FBI. I believe it was in Los Angeles. Some guys robbed a few places, and they come out and the FBI shows up. And there's a whole bunch of them. They get out with their little 6-shooters and they get into a gun shootout, right? The unfortunate part to it was these FBI agents had soft body armor on. That was it.
Mm.
The guys who they were shooting at,
AP?
head to toe, full armor, ARs. Like they had everything that you could think of. So the cops were outgunned, right?
Yeah.
So we kind of need that for our law enforcement right now. They need to have some sort of firearm that is comparable to what we're seeing on the road, right?
Yeah. The only way to stop this is, I'm going to use a canned phrase over and over again, but the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun, or equal force. Like, you have to meet force with force.
Right. And one of the major thought processes in law enforcement is the 1+1 theory.
Yeah.
So if I'm a cop and I'm up against one bad guy, I need 2 cops there.
Force multiplier.
Force multiplier all day long, right? So the DRMO program has supplied these ARs to multiple jurisdictions for many, many years now.
And now the government wants them back. Sorry. Did that scare you?
You didn't scare me.
Oh,
It takes
man,
a lot
that's
to
right.
get me worked up.
They want them back.
Part of the contract that you sign when you accept stuff through DRMO is that you'll have all that stuff available. Anything that they give you, you'll have it available during audit. You'll be able to supply them with whatever they need, any information they need on it when they ask. But the main thing is, if the federal government ever wants their Vietnam era AR-15s back from your local jurisdiction, I'm talking A1s, no forward assist, then you have to give it back to them. Right. So when I was in the military, we were seeing M4s come out at the time. We had the retractable buttstock on it. We went with a little bit shorter of a barrel.
14 and a half instead of 16 and a half.
And everybody's like, oh, this is the coolest thing since sliced bread. Think about what you have at home now.
Pretty cool stuff.
If we look at what's sitting in your closet or your gun safe, and we compare it to the weapons that the DRMO program is giving out, which literally are from the Vietnam era, which one would you rather have in a gunfight? I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So there's absolutely no reason for the government to need or even want these weapons back unless they were going to, I don't know, destroy them, or let's be devil's advocate here.
I got to be careful with this. Is when I want to go say stuff that maybe give them to the people coming across the border. I'm just saying.
Let's say the government is actually going to do the right thing and say, hey, we want those Vietnam era rifles back because we're going to supply you with some from 2001.
But that's not the case.
That is
Definitely
not the case. That is not what is happening.
And I've been to several meetings with local law enforcement or some combined training. That's the easiest way to say it. We'll just say combined training, where the guys who show up that are civilians have been told, hey, you guys got better equipment than we got.
Yeah.
And that's sad. Like, that is a shame. Now, There may be somebody out there going, well, our local law enforcement doesn't need to be militarized. Well, exactly what you said a minute ago with the police, that shootout. Those guys were more equipped than the police were. And listen, there are some really bad guys out there. Yeah, our police need to have an upper hand in dealing with that.
They have to. If we do not equip our law enforcement so that they can match the force or exceed the force of the bad guy who is out there trying to attack your wife, your daughter, your son, we are failing ourselves.
Yes, we are.
Miserably.
Absolutely.
And we cannot allow that to happen. I am not for law enforcement being militarized, and I'm not for them all showing up all tacked out like a special forces guy. That is wrong in my eyes, right? But there are situations where they need that equipment in order to perform the job.
Specialized equipment for a specialized team to deal with a threat that is bigger than what your typical average everyday law enforcement guy has to deal with.
If every patrol officer on the road or your traffic officers on the road were walking out in BDU uniforms with a tack vest on, their pistols mounted to their vest, a taser mounted to their vest, and they're slinging an AR around, we have a problem.
Yeah.
Right?
If that becomes a status quo, that's a problem.
That is a major problem. But if you see an MRAP rolling up to a house with a privacy fence around it and bars on the window, and the side of that MRAP says SWAT, probably an issue at the house that needs that to be addressed, right? So going back to the DRMO program,
And the letter. We'll get into
the letter.
The letter that apparently, I have to say apparently, because we're not at every law enforcement agency around the U.S., not representing any law enforcement agencies.
None whatsoever.
I did that well, didn't I? Not representing any law enforcement agencies, but having some insight into that. My understanding is every single law enforcement agency that has been a part of the DRMO program, sheriffs and counties or sheriffs and police departments have all gotten the same letter. Is that right?
Everyone that I have talked to says yes. You know how the government is. Government's lazy. People who work for the government are lazy. Sorry if you work for the government. I've worked for the government. I understand how lazy people get. I'm not knocking anyone for that. Government will draw up one letter. It'll say one thing. It's a big boilerplate, and at the top of it, they'll say, "Okay, this needs to go to NYPD. Dear NYPD, shoot it out. This one needs to go to Minneapolis. Dear Minneapolis PD, shoot it out." It's the same body of the letter. The only difference is who it's addressed to. I'm going to give a little background so people understand who I am and where I come from.
Don't give too much now. Give it away.
I'm not going to give a whole lot of it here. My wife and I have done some charity work for law enforcement agencies around the country. I have had the luxury of traveling around the country for multiple years now and making very good friends with not just local law enforcement, but I have made good friends with state law enforcement agencies and people within those agencies, federal officers, federal agencies. I have people all over this country that I know and that I talk to pretty regularly. When I heard 2 weeks ago about this letter that came from the DRMO program to a department requesting that they turn in all of the ARs that were issued to them, I asked, did you guys do something wrong to cause this to occur? Because I know what you guys have, they're pretty old, right? It's not like this is something that they're going to say, "Hey, our military, we're down some weapons, man. We got a resupply here."
Yeah.
No, that's not the case, right? I mean, the federal government, they have an endless source of money. Apparently, they can just print however much they want.
They can start printing yen pretty soon.
Yeah, so they can buy whatever they want when they want. So we know that they're not taking these back just to reissue them. I thought that maybe that agency had done something wrong. So I asked them about it. They said, no, the guy who received the letter that was in charge of all that stuff, he told me, no, this is the federal government on a power trip wanting to prove a point that ARs are bad and they need to turn them all in. So I said,
that is one perspective.
I said, so what are you going to do? How are you going to supply your people with ARs? Because like they take them away, you have none. He told me that there was some stuff in the mix being worked on by the state government to where they were going to try to come up with some funding. Probably not going to be enough to cover everything, but they're trying to come up with some funding to supply to these jurisdictions who are losing their weapons to be able to buy some new ones, which is good because that is in a conservative state, where a couple of these others that I've talked to are not in conservative states and they are not considering that funding.
Yeah.
So I spoke with some other people in the last week, and I don't think I've talked to you about this one. I've talked to a couple other agencies, some other people who I've known for several years that I've met through the charity stuff that work out of state, and they've received the same letters at their department.
Yeah.
And those letters basically say, hey, the federal government under the DRMO program has the right to request these weapons to be returned at any point in time. At this point in time, we are requesting that you return these. They give no reason. They don't tell them why they want them back. They just say they want them back. And granted, that's their right. I mean, those jurisdictions have signed that contract saying, hey, no questions asked, we'll give it back.
Well, having the right to do something and just doing it without cause are two different things.
Right.
So there is a cause. There is a reason behind.
There is. Just because you can do something doesn't always mean that you should. And that is something that I learned through the law enforcement community. There are so many of them that live by that.
So at that point, we're only left with what we think the reasons are, and there can't be but a few reasons.
Right. I mean, you use reasonable deduction, and it boils down to one thing. And we're seeing an executive order that is limiting what our citizens.
Two, actually, but yeah.
2 executive orders that are limiting what our citizens can have when it pertains to firearms and ammunition. We're seeing bills that are being presented in Congress that are doing the exact same thing. I believe you were telling me October
1st is when the new one goes in for the multi gun purchase form follow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Denial. Sorry, that's a denial. If you get denied for any reason, that's denial. Actually, there's actually 3. I forgot about this one. This is a denial. You get denied buying a gun for any reason. We then, as the FFL holder, are going to be required, my understanding is, to present the denial form to 3 organizations: local law enforcement here in Tennessee, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations, and then to the ATF. Now, the reason that is erroneous is they said we have to give the denial and the reason for the denial. Well, FFLs are not given the reason for denial. It just says denial. So even their own instructions from what I've read, I got to read them again because I only read them twice. And I'm like, what is this? Almost said it. Almost said it.
You were like that close.
This close. What is this crap? We really don't even have a way to do what they're asking us to do. So, and we are, if you buy more than one gun you may not know this, you buy more than one gun from a dealer, there are 13 pages of paperwork that accompany that for us to keep it on file. Now they're talking about, in addition to that, having to send some form, which I've not seen, which is supposed to be on e-forms from the ATF, some form, who knows how long or short, to 3 more agencies. That is TBI here in Tennessee, the local law enforcement agency, which doesn't care and throws them in the trash anyway because they got too much other stuff they're already dealing with, and then to the ATF. Sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder, but that's what's going on.
Oh, you're good. We see all of this stuff in politics going on, and I can't tell you how many times I've heard from people that I know that are just everyday Joes out here walking the road. It's not a big deal. The government's not going to come and confiscate your guns. They're not going to come knocking on your door. Listen, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I have some friends who are, and I love them to death.
I just want to know what's in black and white. Show me what's the reality.
And the reality of it is currently that we have a federal government that is trying to limit what our citizens can have to protect themselves through legislation.
Yes.
They are not only doing that, but I don't care how many times they yell, we are not defunding the police. They are defunding the police. They are taking away the equipment that the federal government has given jurisdictions. They're taking that equipment away and preventing them from being able to do the job the correct way. Now, they may only have to pull that rifle once in a career. Yes. They may never have to pull it. But it is that one time when they need it and they don't have it that matters. Because it may be your daughter, it may be your son who is in that school, and those cops walk in with a pistol. And we know how that's going to turn out.
And then it takes whatever department that is, who by that point really is ill-equipped, 67 minutes to get into a school system because they have nothing but, right, by that time, maybe a revolver. And you had me think of something a second ago. most people do not realize if there is any type of officer involved shooting, whether it is towards an officer or an officer having to shoot someone, like you pretty much lose your weapon. That weapon then becomes a part of the court system. You may get it back, you may never get it back. Chances are you're never going to get it back because of ballistics in a lot of cases and how things go on appeal for a long time. Like that becomes part of evidence. And so a lot of, we may be requiring officers, hey, buy, let's just say average $700 for a decent AR. Let's just say your $700 AR that you just bought on your limited salary is now going to become a part of the court system, and you're not going to get it back. Or if you do, maybe 5 years when the appeals are over, those types of things. So, I mean, it's a real problem to ask, especially a rookie cop, to fund his own stuff. He didn't have the money to do it. He's making a minimal amount per hour, per week, or whatever, and it's not fair.
It's not. And that you can look at it as a good thing, or you can see it for what it is. There are many jurisdictions who don't have that funding to buy that equipment for these officers, so they require these officers to buy their own stuff.
Yes.
I know there is a department down in South Tennessee, just outside of Memphis. They don't have enough funding to buy even magazines or pistols for their officers. And I know back in the 80s, 90s, and sometimes back in the 70s, it was this way too. And I know that because my family has been in law enforcement for years. Some of these jurisdictions, when you get hired on, they require you to buy all your own equipment.
Yeah.
Now, granted, you have to go through the qualification courses and all that stuff with it, but it's your equipment that you bought. So when you separate from that department, you get to take all that with you. Unfortunately, if you end up getting into a shooting, just like you said, that firearm is now part of evidence. So with jurisdictions not being able to fund these ARs for these officers, some of them have said, okay, I know you have your own. Let's do this. We'll write into policy for our department that you're allowed to use that, right? You can bring it to work and you can carry it on duty. You can keep it in your car. And if a situation occurs, you can take it with you. And these officers are like, great, I'll do it, because they have to be able to protect themselves. They want to go home to their wife and their family at night. But just like you said, if they get into a shooting, that gun is taken immediately.
Yeah.
Like you don't get to carry it around for the rest of the evening and make sure that everything's good.
And every bullet you're carrying on you too, because all those things have to be accounted for, right?
It's all accountable. And I know this because I have personally been in this type of situation. I have been in shooting situations more than once. I know how this works. They will take those pistols. They will take those rifles. They do not care if it's yours or the department's. Now, granted, somebody from your department may come to you and say, hey, here's another gun, put this in your holster. But if the gun they're taking is your personally owned AR-15, I know I have a lot of money invested in mine. You know that as well.
I don't own any anymore. I got scared of guns a couple of weeks ago, and so I heard this program, the DRMO program, where they're wanting a lot of our guns back. So I thought I would just send it to them.
He turned all his in gun buyback program. That's what it was. They gave him 25
They never opened in the first place.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, they are going to take those weapons from those officers and they're going to process them. They are going to be collected as evidence. They're going to be tested ballistically. Like all this stuff is going to be done to them, and they cannot have those back until the case is adjudicated.
Yes. Or if it's not, I mean, literally, my dad was an attorney. And he was involved in a really weird, wild shooting one. He wasn't involved. He was the attorney involved in the case. But he had a client that just, I can't believe the guy lived. Like he got shot. He got really shot up. And I went to the hospital to visit him. You know those cartoons? I shouldn't be laughing about this, but it was funny. The guy was dumb as a box of rocks. He ran from the police, had no reason to run. He was just an idiot. But he was literally like the cartoons you see people with those casts with the bars.
Right. Like
the guy was in the hospital like this. I remember my dad asking, "Like, why did you run?" He's like, "Police scare me. Dude, I
bet they scare you now."
I can't believe he lived. I don't remember how many times he got shot because I was like, I think my dad took me for like effect. I was about 14. Like I think my dad was saying, son, this is why you never just pull over. Don't
Just pull
don't
over.
run from the police. But I can't. The guy lived anyway. But that was on appeal. I think it ended up getting like a mistrial twice, and like all the cops who were involved in that shooting, all their guns, every one of them were taken and put in and became part of evidence. And it was a lot of guns. I can't believe the guy lived.
Yeah.
He got shot something like 15 times and lived. Did you know that? Hey, you know this statistic? What percentage of people who get shot by a pistol live?
100.
What percentage? 100%? No. It's high though.
I would say it would be more around the 70-ish.
80% of people get just a little bit of trivia there. So
I'm not shocked by that. I mean, when you think about how firearms work and how shooters are.
apparently, you get shot a bunch of times. So go back to the letter of demand. Sorry, I know I scroll a little bit. I'm a little ADD in case you hadn't figured that
Me
out.
too.
So, go back to the letter. So is there a time frame? Is there a response from you all needed? Like, what do you know the outcome of that yet, or is it still in like deliberation on what to do?
So the letter that I got, the letter that I was actually able to review,
Okay.
it did not come from here in Tennessee. This
Okay.
one came from outside of the state. I know that letter is the same as all the other letters that all the other departments are getting. I know that.
Yes.
I just know how the government works, right? I didn't see a date on that yet. I imagine in the future, probably in the very near future, since it's been a couple of months since some of these departments have gotten these, they're going to send something out saying, hey, we need this turned in by this date. But as of now, there is not a date that's been put on it. I think some jurisdictions, specifically down in Texas, crazy conservative state, unless you get into the big cities. That's a different story.
Austin, San Antonio,
Yeah.
Houston, parts of Dallas.
That's a different story.
Yes.
But most of your jurisdictions in Texas are very conservative,
Yes.
and they basically told the government,
Go
they
pound
go
sand.
pound sand, and we'll get them to you when we get them to you, if we get them to you at all.
Well, when you make a letter of demand, you have to have legally, you're required to give outlines of what is expected post a letter. So you have to provide dates. You have to even provide procedures on how those things go. So the government is doing, particularly a bad job of this just by saying
yeah.
a letter of demand with no qualifications on how those things are supposed to be
And
done.
look at
So,
what we're dealing with in Washington.
yeah, so you probably are going to get a follow-up letter, and we'll have some of those details. You will, can you come back and let's talk about that whenever?
Yeah, whenever the sources that I have produce what they get, I will bring it.
Okay.
We'll sit down and talk.
Now I want to give a closing on this. This is the piece that we haven't really hit hard. I mentioned it, but this is what I think you need to realize. And just go look at this is when people turn this off, because when you say something that sounds crazy, right? But you need to go look at what happened in Nazi Germany with local police forces, weapon confiscation, how they actually got control of multiple countries, and how they had people waving Nazi flags of welcome to Austria whenever they came in, because the people been disarmed. They went through the disarming process first. And if that is short-term or long-term goal here, whatever it looks like this would be a logical step based on what we've seen in the past, because, you and I are friends. I've got, we have a gun shop. So we have a lot of law enforcement come in here. I have a lot of friends that work with the sheriff's department. They all are concerned about the fact that they don't have what they need already. That's why there is a reserve force of police. Not every department keeps up with it like they should. It does take a little funding to have reservists, because then reservists need to be trained. But the reason you have reservists is because if you have an SHTF, you need people.
Right. You have to have.
The other day we had a false active shooter up here at the hospital, which is a mile from our gun shop. And I think something like 23 cars. Now, that wasn't just police. That was police, fire, EMS, like everybody. It was a false alarm. But when you pull a bunch of resources for something like that, if there really is an active shooter, like sometimes they need reservists to come step in and help. Hey, you're needed, and the reservists need to have their weapons too. So I'll post a link to the DRMO. I'll post a link to the attorney that I said earlier, John Harris. I'm giving you like some referrals, so keep me in mind because I want to work with the TFA. But I'm telling you, there's some good resources and information out there. When you get the follow-up letter, if there's one, we'll talk about it again.
Right.
I don't know how long we've gone. Oh my gosh, an hour. So
that's nice.
Yeah, it's a whole hour. Do you have anything else, like anything you think I should post at the bottom that people should look up or find?
I still need to do some more digging on the internet myself to try to find more, to find out if anyone is covering this at all, because so far I haven't seen anything. I've searched and searched and searched, and it is just kept under wraps, and mainly because it's a federal government to local government kind of thing. And,
Yeah, keep it hush hush.
and a lot of your local governments don't want their people talking about stuff like that because of whatever reason. I really don't. I can't think of a good reason why you wouldn't. I mean, I don't know. But I do need to do some more digging on the internet and try to find anything that's being covered on it. I haven't been able to thus far.
I'll post what I can post below to help. We'll just take it from there. And if there is a follow-up, we'll do a follow-up video. There's some things I think that there's actually several people that are going to come in for other topics. Like there's some things that are off the charts now. You can even address crime here because we have to be careful with how we say it, but you can address crime here because Mayberry is not Mayberry quite anymore.
Not anymore.
We are in need of officers. Skilled people that have level heads, which is kind of hard to
good
find.
skilled people who are not willing to sacrifice their time for little pay and truly believe in public service.
Yeah.
That is not just I show up for a paycheck thing.
Yeah.
If you want to be a cop, you truly have to have a public service mindset at heart.
Yeah. So we're going to close out. If you will, hey, like and subscribe. You can share this video as well. We are working on getting Rumble a little more active, and also Patreon, because to be quite honest with you, like if I sit in front of guns or have guns out here, we talk too much about gun parts or modifications. Google hates us, YouTube hates us, Facebook hates us, like all of the social media. Pretty much they just hate us.
They're just scared that gun's going to stand up and turn around and shoot somebody.
Yeah. So we're going to hate them back, and we're going to go. I shouldn't say it. Yeah, we're going to hate them back. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to hate them back. We're going to go start putting up stuff at Patreon here pretty soon. But just favor, like, and subscribe. We'll get a follow up on this. We'll probably talk about some crime stats going up because things are not really as good as they seem, and the news already didn't paint it good. So it's a bad situation to be in. Anything else to add?
Do your own research. Don't rely on what other people are telling you.
Yeah.
Do your own research and use an open mind about what you're reading.
Yep. Thanks for joining us. Stop it now. And I think I know how to do this. I think you just go whoop, end string, and end.